Good morning again, everyone. Good morning, everyone online. I don't know where you see me from here. So I think, like most of you, I've been considering how we respond to suffering in ourselves and suffering in others. So how we engage our practice and how we sustain ourselves with this practice. We come here for refuge to this place. We come here to be together, to honor what's most sacred about all of us, to take refuge. But refuge doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. When we face suffering, clouds of delusion can come forward. We can feel disjointed, angry, confused. I was thinking about the first of the three little pigs when their house is blown down, kind of naked and vulnerable. So I want us to support one another, and I want this to be a place where we can face what's happening and sustain ourselves. When we feel these things, we join with the rest of the world. We feel in our minds and hearts and bodies what it's like to be vulnerable, to be confused, to struggle. And we say, I want to do something. I want to respond. We are called by our humanity to respond. And then we need to ask, well, how do I respond? What do I do? How do I find the strength and the solace and the courage to deepen and continue to bring wisdom and compassion to the world as best I can? We're not saints, we're humans. So we always say, the best I can. And this is where our practice and the teachings come in. If we're drawn to the Dharma, to this place, this way of addressing the world, and there are many, where we turn is to understand this and open our hearts to this. We find in the teachings that the root of suffering and violence is to delusion that we're separate, that we're cut off from one another. And the lack of realization of that interdependence, our connection, is what sets the condition for actions that cause suffering in ourselves and others. We ask, what does this mean to me in my everyday life? How do these teachings inspire me? How do I live this in a human way? How do we work with our limitations, our discouragement, our anger, our confusion? It's important to be detailed and concrete about this. What's who am I right now? What are my obstacles? What are my fears? So this kind of questioning brings us to the teachings in a very real way. We learn how to swim, how to breathe, how to be alive in this ocean. The Lankavatara Sutra says, things are not as they seem, okay? nor are they otherwise. So we live at the intersection of the particular and the whole. We are specific human beings with limitations, with gifts, with challenges, and our true nature is this vast interconnectedness. So we can't retreat into the abstract. We can't retreat into some, I don't know, nether region. It is true that things are not as they seem. In other words, the vital interdependence of all reality is what's most true. But it's also true that we're discrete, definable people. When the sixth ancestor was a boy and he heard this chant of the Heart Sutra, one of the key sutras in our school. And it says, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Meaning we're not limited, right? But his immediate response was, well, I have eyes, I have a nose. In other words, he brought it down into his own personal life, not this, kind of going off into abstractions. So this is where we must go. It is not only that we are the dynamic working of life, but also that we are unique individuals and we must tend to our lives. We must enter this experience. This is how we transform the basis of who we are, not to get away from who we are, but for that to transform into a living, breathing, compassionate, unique individual. And this, we say, is the koan of everyday life. How do I do this? How do I live this? So we don't turn away from anything. We cultivate non-harming in our response to whatever arises. And by doing that, we're asking a lot of ourselves. So to do that, we have to bring things down to a human scale. In a way, this is a kind of renunciation, a willingness not to be caught by the ideas we have about who we should be or what should be, or, all that stuff. In a sense, it's not to be sizist about our response to things. That it doesn't count if it's just being kind to a person on the street. Somehow that's not enough. We should do something really big. But we don't know what that smile, what that kind gesture, what that thoughtful listening does. We don't know. It is also a way of recognizing the fact that entering the teachings, making an effort to meet aggression with compassion, to support the growth of wisdom, is not just a matter of beginning, but of sustaining this. We need to sustain it, infuse it into our lives. So sustain is an interesting word. It comes from sustenance, nourishment, food. It's what is required for us to continue. What this is for each of us can be different. But one thing we know is that it's not just ourselves. We are not just alone in this. We can take refuge. We can return to Buddha, which is our true and deepest nature, Dharma, the teachings that inform our lives, and Sangha, the community of friends and all being. I was, not too long ago, I was speaking with a Christian friend who shared with me an image from the Bible that speaks to this. So I've shifted the meaning a bit, but I like this image. The way I would put it is when we are in the thrall of delusion of a separate self and we don't entrust ourselves to a deeper reality, we're not sustaining ourselves with and awake to the ways we need to sustain ourselves. We are, and this is the image, like a shrub in the desert that will not see when relief comes. It's the experience of living in parched places of wilderness and uninhabited land. Isn't that grim? Pretty grim, huh? When we settle and allow ourselves to return to what is most true about us, that we're not isolated, separate, and alone, that our connection, our interwovenness with all beings, however you understand it, is real and vital and alive. This is trusting. Not trusting that everything's going to be okay, but trusting that there's a way. So this, in this image, is like a tree planted by water, sending out its roots into the stream. It does not fear that heat comes. Its leaves stay green, and it does not cease to bear fruit. Okay, isn't that a nice image? You know, that when we sustain ourselves, it's like the living nourishment of water enters us. In his fascicle Baika, plum blossoms, Dogen Zenji said, he uses the image of an old plum tree. A plum tree blossoms early, it blossoms in the cold. And he quotes his teacher, the great Chan master Tendo Nyojo Rujing, who recited this poem to his assembly. The thorn-like spiked branched old pine tree suddenly burst forth, first with one blossom or two blossoms, then 3, 4, 5, finally blossoms without count. No perfume to take pride in, no fragrance to boast of. In scattering, they evoke a springtime scene as they are blown over the grass and trees. So this is a way of saying, when we plant ourselves, when we nourish ourselves, that this aliveness happens. And it is a generous aliveness. This blossoms scatter all over. So this is an instruction for our practice. If we want to sustain the way, by the way, my second name, Doyo, is sustains the way. My first name, Daijaku, is great silence, which I liked a lot when I got it. The second name, my second name, Doyo, sustains the way. I thought, oh, good. Everybody else gets beyond the way and I get to sweep up. But I learned over these years that sustaining ourselves and sustaining the way and sustaining our practice, whatever that is just essential if we're going to live in this world as real whole people. So to do that, we have to take up the question of who we think we are. We have to understand ourselves. We have to deepen our realization of our true nature so we can open our hearts and open our hands to what needs to happen now. We can hear the cries of the world and we can respond. When we have sustenance that we can return to intelligently, consistently, we will not be overwhelmed. We will have friends. We will have a practice. We will have community. We will be in this together. This is the way the teachings not only guide, but sustain us, and the practice sustains us. So when we think about this, we weave together, most of us weave together a practice of coming together here in community, sitting zazen, listening to the Dharma, being together, sharing our lives together. But we don't leave the practice here. We go out, we live in our homes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how that works. Okay. In our Zen practice, we don't separate work or love or friendship or responsibilities or taking care of the earth. We don't separate any of that. That's all practice. So there's no special time to practice, even though there is a special time to practice when we come together and sit zazen and devote ourselves to this together. So when we think about sustaining ourselves, we think about how we do this in our everyday lives. And so I'm going to talk about a few things, okay? We can sit zazen at home. I encourage that. I really encourage that. We can offer incense, herbs, and flowers, light our hearts to an altar at home. An altar can be whatever you want it to be. You can put a rock on it. You can put a picture on it. You can have your family on it or your close friends or those that have passed or whatever. I have a little hut behind my house where I go and hang out. And the person who built it, someone who Sandy knows, built a little niche in the wall for me. And in that niche, I have a picture or a drawing that a friend of mine did of Prajnaparamita, who's the mother of the Buddhas, is the mother of wisdom. And then another little one is an image of Fudo, and Fudo's really fierce and cuts through, says, has a rope. Fudo has a rope, and when you're trying to escape practice, Fudo lassos you and brings you back and says, nope, you're not getting away. And then Amida Buddha, which is Amida Buddha, is the Buddha of infinite light. So what speaks to you? I also have a picture of a fox nearby and, whatever. To have a place where you can bring yourself, can chant, you can offer incense, you can simply bow and say hello when you're going in and out of the door, something to help you remember. And if you're at work, you can have a stealth altar. You can put a rock on your desk. No one needs to know. It's just you and what's important to you. How you care for your kitchen, your food, how you buy or not buy things, where they come from, being appreciative of, as we say, the innumerable beings that bring us our food and bring us our clothing. How you handle your belongings with gratitude that your belongings are not your belongings. They're aspects of reality that are there to help you right now. And so you thank them. Say, thank you very much. Look, isn't that nice? This cup is allowing me to drink some water. How we care for our wider world, taking time for silence. It doesn't have to be a long time. Take a walk in the park. Just be quiet for a while. Turn off your phone for a while. Step away. Put it in a drawer or something. It doesn't have to, you're not talking about going to a monastery and keeping silent for 3 months. You're just talking about interweaving these things in your life. Take time for personal reflection. Sit and consider, who are you? What are you doing? What's important to you? How are you expressing what's important to you? in the choices that you're making and the way that you're living. This is not corrosive, okay? It's super important. This is not corrosive. This is just, where am I now? What's important to me? Study. Take time to study. A line, a phrase. Study doesn't mean cramming more information in your head. It means exposing yourself to that which inspires you. Cooking. How do you cook? Do you pay attention? Do you know? Eating. Saying words of gratitude before you have a meal. Do it in you. A friend of ours, a Tibetan teacher, who you may know, we were out to lunch once, and she said, this is your out in the public way of saying the chant that we usually say. Innumerable laborers brought us this food. We should know how it comes to blah, blah, blah. And she said, just lift up your plate and say, bon appetit, three treasures. Driving, this is like a really good practice, right? Driving or riding your bicycle, especially riding your bicycle, paying attention. And when people open their doors, you don't hate them. Cleaning, how do we treat the things? No, is it just like, I just have to get this over with? A friend of mine who trained in Japan for a while wrote a wonderful article about rags and how you can thank rags. Rags are there. They're very humble. They're like, maybe they used to be a shirt or something. And now they're very humble and being willing to be used to get the dust out of the corners. So this is not precious. This is just ordinary. How you go to work, what your work is. We can say, oh, we have to have perfect work. But wherever you work, if you bring your mind to this and your heart to it and do your best to bring it alive, then that is good work. Again, how you handle media, social media. There are many gifts and benefits. This is not like go off into the woods and never look at a cell phone again. It's simply being intelligent about how this can grab our minds and eat up our lives. Rest, how we rest our bodies, how we rest our hearts, how we rest our minds, and how we care for our relationships. This is especially true in times of great divisiveness. You can come up with sayings, gathas, that you say when you eat or when you enter, when you pick up the phone. And there's always nonverbal practices. Bowing, looking gently at another person, paying attention to the earth beneath our feet. So all of these are things that you can do. And I'd like to encourage you to do them because you can experiment with what sustains you, what brings life to your life. And in this world right now, we need to be sustained so that we can act skillfully, so that we can bring a whole heart. And there is ferocity to this. Don't get me wrong. This is not about, as a friend of mine said, the tyranny of niceness. This is about really, we have Manjushri, the sword of wisdom. But it is a sword, as we say, the sword of Manjushri cuts into one. So that means that whatever energy and ferocity we bring to bear on this time has a quality of care and not hatred. So there's more we can talk about, but I'm going to stop there. I encourage you to think about these things if you're interested in actually learning some more. Some of what I spoke about is on our website, and how to develop a home practice. And this weaving together of our time together formally in the Zendo, and that every aspect of your life, that is Zen practice. And again, I encourage you to have a home altar. I just think it's great. So, all right. So I'll finish the talk, and then do we close out and then have questions? I have questions now.
We have questions.
Okay, so questions.